It's the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. Welcome on back. This is All Aussie Rules, and today we're checking out the best 22 for every single club. Stick around. Welcome on in, everybody, to the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. This is episode 3 of 2025. We're counting down until AFL season 2025 kicks off. As of release day of this episode, should be 43 days until opening bounce for the 2025 season. And as we have been for the last couple of weeks, and we will continue to for the next couple, we're having one episode a week every Wednesday, going live on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of those. So you can check it out. Also, if you haven't already, go check out the TikTok. We're doing a daily countdown of the 50 best players leading into the first game of the season. So go check that out. Make sure you like everywhere, subscribed everywhere. All your interactions help. So don't forget to do that. Today's episode, hopefully you'll enjoy it. I've spent a few days over the last week or two working on putting together best 22s for every single club in the AFL. Heading into 2025, obviously all my thoughts and opinions, some may be wrong, some may be right. We'll see how they play out, I guess. In the end, that's what we're looking at today. So jump in the comments, let me know what you think about it all. That's about all in terms of news, I guess, or of the podcast. There's been a bit of news in the AFL over the last week. I can't remember where we were at last Wednesday, but obviously Carlton have lost Nick Newman for the season, which is a massive loss for them. He did a patella injury, so not good news for them heading early pre-season days. There's also been news today that... today as in when I'm recording this, Jamari Ugle-Hagen's pre-season is all over the place a bit. The Dogs unclear at the moment with exact wording of what they're doing. Obviously he has some personal issues. They're trying to work through it. So we'll see what that means for the Bulldogs this year and for Ugle-Hagen. Obviously we wish him the best. Whatever is happening with him at the moment. And yeah, that's about the big news, I guess, at the moment. Jai Simpkin named sole skipper of North Melbourne with Larkey and Sheasel as vice captains. Pretty much sets up Sheasel to take over the captaincy in the next couple of years, you would imagine. Maybe 2026, but probably definitely 2027, I would suggest. Time of recording, 24 days till Indigenous All-Stars match, which will be our first bit of football for the year. So we're counting down, we're getting closer every single day. But let's jump into best 22s for every single team. Starting with Adelaide, as we always, or almost always do, alphabetical order. So Adelaide Crows, obviously disappointing year for them last year. In 2024, they were expected to do all right. They did not succeed. Finished very low on the ladder. This is my projected best 22 for them. So I've done 22 plus 6 emergencies for every team. That's how I've worked it out. I don't know where we're looking at the big calls here, I guess. Obviously, the midfield line, pretty set. They've got a pretty solid mid line in Jordan Dawson, Matt Crouch, Saligo. Riley O'Brien had a bit of a down year last year, so he'll be looking to bounce back. Isaac Rankin will be going through that midfield a fair bit. I've got him starting at the half-forward flank, but potentially, certainly by the end of the year, I think he will be in their best 22 as a almost full-time mid, rotating into the forward line for breaks and when they need a goal or something. But I think you'll see him play a lot of midfield time this year. Obviously, a couple new players joining the Adelaide Crows lineup, and I've put them both on, well, two of them on wings. James Peatling, I think, will be a huge addition for them. He'll probably get more centre bounce time than a normal wingman, but we'll see how that plays out. Alex Neil-Bullen on the other wing, he'll probably rotate between there and the forward flank mainly. Isaac Cumming coming off the half-back line will be a good addition to them as well. Sid Draper, obviously the first-year player drafted in with pick number 4, I think he went, didn't he? He'll get plenty of opportunities this year. As will probably those 6 players that are on the emergencies list of mine. Pretty even team. They've got plenty of options, plenty of depth. We'll be looking more in depth at each club in YouTube videos coming up. The first one will be Adelaide Crows, which will be, I think, on the 31st of January. It'll be going live, so 9 days away. So we'll be going more in depth into all of this for them then. But yeah, that's how I see their best 22. It's not necessarily the 22 that we'll see line up for round 1, game 1 for the Crows. But I think this is close to how they would line up if they had a perfect world. It will be interesting to see how this lineup does go. As I said, they had plenty of high hopes last year. Didn't quite succeed in that world. I see a lot of people starting to jump on their bandwagon again for 2025. Once bitten, twice shy. To be honest, I don't know if I can get on the bandwagon of them again this year. I did last year. I had plenty of faith in them, and they kind of let me down a little bit. But they are a team that's, on paper at least, certainly improved from last year, in my eyes. The additions of Cumming, Peatling, Neil-Bullen, all really good. Haven't really lost a whole heap. So we'll see how that plays out. I think a key one there, Riley Thilthorpe, as an emergency. I think potentially, certainly by the end of this year, I think he'll be in their best 22, and I think maybe Taylor Walker might be going out, depending on... He'll need to show improvement on what he did in 2024. He had a bit of a down year. 2023, though, he had a really good year. So if he can get back close to that sort of level, he'll hold his spot. Next up, we have the Brisbane Lions, the reigning premiers, a team that has only got better, you would imagine, on paper and in actual sense of the word, I guess. They copped a lot of injuries last year, so all of a sudden they're now getting back to full fitness or closer to full fitness for this year, which will be interesting to see how they fit all these players into a team. And then they've also got a couple young guns joining the cause. They didn't add much, didn't lose much. So, in all honesty, it's looking like a good team. Obviously, Joe Danaher out is a huge one. He's that player that plays full forward a bit, centre half forward, running forward. He gets up the ground a lot, but he also helps out in the ruck and gives Oscar McInerney a break. So they'll probably be needing somebody to come in and take over that role a little bit for 2025. I'm assuming that's probably their thought process behind getting Sam Day in, who has been a bit hit and miss in getting games over recent years, but for Gold Coast last couple of years, he has been someone that can play full forward, but also be that backup ruckman. So I would imagine we'll probably see him a little bit throughout the season. We also saw, obviously, Darcy Falk can carry, I won't say carry, but can play the role of ruckman when Oscar McInerney is missing games, so there's that option as well. Obviously, Coleman coming back into this lineup is a huge add from, he played one quarter basically in 2024 before getting injured. Tom Doherty didn't play at all last year, so he'll be a massive in the Brisbane Lions backline as well. That backline is looking really quite strong, in all honesty. Their midfield line, obviously also very strong. Dunkley, Neil, Ash, Will Ashcroft. Chuck in Levi Ashcroft on the bench or off the bench. He'll probably play a little bit more half forward flank, maybe wing at times throughout this year, but expect to see him get some games. Cam Rayner off the half forward line, McCluggage. Obviously, their small forwards did really well in the final series in Kai Lohman and Callum Archie. Both had really outstanding final series. Development from Logan Morris. Obviously, last year was his first senior year. Made his first debut in unexpected and quite random circumstances, but got the job done. As a first year full forward, did pretty well. I would look for him to cement that spot throughout 2025. Other things, Starkovic, unlucky. Just too much depth in this backline, in all honesty. Sam Marshall, another first-year player this year, who potentially will be getting games at some point, but there is a lot of midfield talent on this team, so it will be a hard one to crack into the best 22. But that's how I see the Lions. They've got stronger from 2024, in all honesty. They were on top. Rightly so, they won the premiership. And yeah, they've only got better. So dangerous signs for the rest of the competition. So it'll be, interesting to see how other teams can catch up to these guys, because I think they are the front runners at the moment. Next up, Carlton Blues. As we said, they've already lost one in Nick Newman, which has changed their lineup, their best 22 a little bit. I had already done their best 22 when Newman went down, so I did have to make some changes on the fly today. But it's still a very solid-looking team. It'll be interesting to see, I guess, how they line up in their ideal world. Probably the main decision that they've got to make is what they do with the ruck. I have put Pitane as number one ruck with De Koning off the bench. The more I think about it, the more I think that I'm wrong with that decision, and it probably in the best 22 world for Carlton is to have Tom De Koning as a sole ruckman, and add another runner, or even maybe another forward / tall that can pinch hit in the ruck as a second option there. But at the moment I went with this with Pitane on top as that number one ruckman, and Tom De Koning coming off the bench, but also going forward as well, because he can kick some goals. But I think in an ideal world for Carlton, their best lineup is having De Koning as the number one ruckman. Other things to note here, I mean, there's not too many crazy things. Jager Smith will get a lot of games. He'll get a lot of possessions. He'll probably come off the bench, to be honest. I've put him on a half-forward flank at the moment, but he'll be someone that gets quite a bit of midfield time, especially around that Patrick Cripps, Sam Walsh. Trying to just get a lot of football. It's what he does best throughout the under-18s and VFL so far. So I think we'll see him get a lot of game time and potentially rack up a lot of disposals. Probably will cut down on Adam Serra's time in the middle. We'll see how that plays out. Blake Acres, Elijah Hollands, the two wingmen. I think the big one is Sam Doherty. He's someone that has played midfield, has played wing over recent seasons. I think in the perfect world for Carlton, him coming off the half-back line is probably where they want him. In all honesty, they've got a pretty stacked midfield. I don't think they need him in there too often. Maybe pinch hitting in the midfield at times, but his ball use off the back line, I think, could be really beneficial, getting back into that role. Zach Williams, he obviously played a bit of forward last year. He played a lot of back as well, so it'll be interesting to see where they see him as their best option. Could be at either end. Other than that, I don't think there's anything too crazy on the field or off the field. Obviously, Nick Haynes has joined the club from GWS as well. Other than that, that's the Carlton Blues lineup. I think they've got a very strong team, in all honesty. Obviously, was a little bit stronger until they lost Newman for the season. They won't want to be copying too many more injuries. Obviously, Charlie Curnow has also had a bit of an interrupted pre-season so far, having surgery, I think, in December. But I would expect he will be ready to go for their first game of the year. And I'd be watching for him to have a big season, even without a great pre-season, in all honesty. Next up, we've got Collingwood Magpies. 2023 Premiership team, missed finals in 2024. They'll be looking to bounce back. As has been mentioned by me and by many other people, they have gone all in on 2025. They're trying to win another premiership with this team, with this ageing list, before some of the legends of the Collingwood Football Club retire. Obviously added in two half-back flankers in Harry Perryman and Dan Houston, two massive ins for them, which will add a bit of strength to that team. They've also added in Tim Embry, who I don't even have in their best 22 at the moment. Whether that stays that way, he could take the spot of Dan McStay, he could take the spot of Oscar Elliott, or we'll see how that plays out, but it'll be interesting nonetheless. Midfield-wise, Dacos, Crisp, Jordan De Goey at their peak is a really strong midfield, with Scott Pendlebury and Tom Mitchell also coming off the bench is a lot of talent. I think this is one of the stronger emergency lists in the AFL as well, in all honesty. Ed Allen showed that he has a bit of talent in that as a midfielder in that last game of the season last year. Tim Embry obviously is a gun forward that's kicked a lot of goals in his career. Lockie Schultz, in all honesty, will play every game this year, bar injury or suspension. But I just don't know. I couldn't find a spot for him on the field. But maybe he does go in place of Will Hoskin Elliott. Charlie Dean showed some improvement as a key defender last year, and in all honesty, possibly takes Billy Frampton out of the team. Mason Cox also will get plenty of games throughout this season. So I think that team looks stronger on paper, in my eyes, than the 2023 Premiership team. I think Collingwood have a solid crack at it this year. I don't know if they're good enough to win it all. They're going to need a bit of luck to go their way, but I mean that's the same for any team any year. So that's the Collingwood lineup. Moving on to the Essendon Bombers. There's their best 22 according to me. Where's the big surprises or big names here? Isaac Kako, I think, goes straight into their forward lineup. In my opinion, he's going to... They lacking small forwards, so I think there's a spot there for him straight away. Other than that, I don't know if there's too many surprises in this lineup. They haven't lost too much on last year. Dyson Heppel's obviously out. Stringer's out as well, so they've lost 40-odd goals there through Stringer, which they'll have to find, but they'll be hoping that a lot of that comes through the Nate Caddy improvement, Isaac Kako joining the team, and whoever else goes forward as a tall forward, whether that's Harry Jones or whether Peter Wright's getting games or whoever it is, they'll be needing quite a few goals out of them throughout this season. Midfield line is really strong. Ruckman, they've got a lot of Ruckman on their list. I don't know who's the best of them. Maybe it could go anyway of Sam Draper, Todd Goldstein, or Nick Bryan, in all honesty. I think they start with Sam Draper. Will he still be their best ruckman come the end of this season? I don't know. Goldstein doesn't have many years left in him. This might be his last. But we could be seeing Nick Bryan and Sam Draper fight it out for most of the year for that number one ruck, I think. Their backline's pretty solid. I think overall they've got a pretty good list. Maybe just lacking a little bit of depth in small forwards and running backmen, in all honesty, but they've got plenty of height on their list. There is no doubt about it. The Bombers do have plenty of height. Next up, we've got the Fremantle Dockers. Should have played finals last year. Fell apart in that final 4 weeks with not winning a game. Alex Pearce obviously injured a bit last year, so he was in and out of the team, certainly in that second half of the year. So he'll be a good, hopefully staying in the team will help them. Luke Ryan, All-Australian. Jordan Clark was good. Jeremy Sharp joined them last year, played most games. Their midfield's pretty strong. Obviously added Shy Bolton to their lineup this year. Does he play half forward flank? Does he play half back flank? Where does he play? Does he pinch it in the midfield? I don't think he'll be needed in the midfield too often, so I think we'll probably see him forward a fair bit this year for Fremantle, which I think will be very dangerous in this forward line. Running around the feet of Jai Amiss and Josh Tracy will be a really good spot. They are potentially going to be the best tall forward duo in the AFL. At the moment, I mean, you can't go past Carlton's, but Freo's is probably second best in all honesty. I think Amiss was the one a couple of years ago that looked like the better one. I think last year Tracy has probably passed him as their best tall forward, but they're both very talented players, and I think over the next 2 or 3 years we'll start to see this Freo tall forward lineup really extend it into that top echelon. So yeah, Shy Bolton will be really relishing running around them, I reckon. Their midfield is outstanding. Obviously, they were the best clearance team in the competition last year. Sarong, Hayden Young, Andrew Brayshaw, absolute domination. Chuck in Nate Fife off the bench, and you've just got that perfect combination. They're good in the ruck department, Sean Darcy and Luke Jackson. If they can keep Sean Darcy fit and healthy, that will be hugely beneficial for them. Some pretty solid names in their emergency list as well. Michael Walters didn't have a great year last year, so he'll be looking to try and turn that back around. Frederick Narkle from Port Adelaide, Cox and Brody. I think, yeah, Freo certainly on paper look like they should be a team that certainly are very competitive this year. Arguably could have, with a bit of luck, played finals last year, and not just played finals, almost could have made top 4 with a couple things going their way throughout the season. So they did have that close loss to the Bombers. They had a draw against Collingwood. They were pretty competitive, I think, in the second last week against GWS most of the way and just fell away a little bit late. So you turn those around and all of a sudden they finish 4th or 5th on the ladder, and a home final for them would have put them straight through to the next week just about. So a bit disappointing for them, but yeah, I think we'll see them come back. If they stay fit and healthy, they look like a solid team on paper. Next up, we've got Gold Coast Suns. Can they finally play finals football in 2025? They haven't done it as a club yet. And look, they've strengthened their team. There's no doubt about it. They did lose a couple players, but I think overall they're stronger. Obviously, added in Daniel Rioli, John Noble, a couple running backmen. Is a strong start to any lineup. They also got Lombard with pick 8 or 9 or whatever it was from their academy. There's high hopes for him. I think he goes straight into their best 22. He'll play a variety of roles, a bit of midfield, a bit of forward time, I reckon, throughout his first year or two. Jared Witts is still one of the best ruckmen. He had a really good season last year. I think he played 16 games, did really well. Got injured, I think, against Collingwood maybe, did ribs and missed a few weeks, but a really good season nonetheless. Matt Rowell, Noah Anderson, Miller, Flanders all running through that midfield. They'll get plenty of it, and I think you'll see Flanders get a bit more midfield time this year. Now that they've got Rioli in there, they've got Noble in there as well. They're not lacking that half-back flanker, that running ball user off the back line, which will allow Flanders to get probably a bit more midfield time this year. We'll see how that plays out. Closey was really good last year. I think this is a team that's looking better. They've just got to learn how to travel, I guess. That was their big thing last year. If they had travelled a bit better throughout the first 20 weeks of the season, they would have been playing finals. Their home form was outstanding. Their numbers at home was outstanding. So, yeah, I think we'll see this Gold Coast team shaping like they should be a finals team. Whether they are or not, I guess we'll find out over the next 6, 7, 8, 9 months. But on paper, they look like a team that should be contending for finals spots at least. Next up, we've got one of the big question marks in my mind for 2025, and that's the GWS Giants. They've got a pretty solid team still. There's no doubt about it. They did lose quite a few players, and while I don't think it has made their best 22 look any worse, it's hurt their depth because the players coming in that weren't in their best 22 last year have kept them at a similar level to last year. Their problem is, though, I think they've lost a lot of depth from what they had last year, and I think that is going to be their biggest issue. Their backline is outstanding. Between Sam Taylor, Jack Buckley, both outstanding tall defenders. Connor Iden, I think, is one of the most underrated medium-sized defenders in the competition. Himmelberg, Whitfield was outstanding with his ball use last year. Lekalia, I think, is in their best 22 as a tall defender, a third tall defender if they need him. Otherwise, I mean, you can probably rotate him out for another runner or something depending on who you're playing. Their midfield's really strong. Tom Green, Josh Kelly. Kieran Briggs in the ruck was outstanding last year. Caniglio. Chuck in Brent Daniels outstanding in their forward line with Toby Green, Jesse Hogan. Chuck in Stringer this year to that forward line. It's going to be a very dangerous forward line, which probably frees up Aaron Cadman, in all honesty, as well, as their fifth forward option, which probably gives him an easier opponent a lot of weeks, because Jesse Hogan's obviously going to take the number one defender. Stringer's going to get a lot of attention down there as well, which just frees up Aaron Cadman. Their bench looks really solid as well. Darcy Jones was good last year. Callum Ward, Xavier O'Halloran, Callum Brown, and then it's their emergencies, not terrible. Riccardi has a future, Angwin Weir, but overall, they've certainly lost depth on what they had last year. So I feel like injuries may really hurt GWS this year. If they cop injuries, they may struggle. But on paper, their best 22 is as good as anyone's in my eyes. Next, we got the Geelong Cats. Missed out on a grand final appearance by, 10 points. And they were up with a couple minutes to go. So they'll be a little bit disappointed about that. They'll be wanting to bounce back. They've added a couple players to their best 22. Obviously, Bailey Smith has joined them from the Bulldogs. So that's a big in for them straight away. Jack Martin, I don't have in the best 22 there. You'll see him as an emergency. It'll be interesting to see if he can work his way into the best 22. I don't think he's there at the moment, though. Another team that, they are getting on in age a lot of the way, but at the same time, they've still got plenty of young talent. A strong forward line. Jeremy Cameron was outstanding last year. Myers has shown that he's great. Tyson Stengel. Ollie Henry's been improving. Their backline's really strong. Tom Stewart, Max Holmes, both coming off probably career best years. So they do have a lot of talent in this team, and I would imagine we will see them be another team that should be competing all the way through the season. I don't think they have the best lineup, but they make use of what they do. Like last year, they did what they had to do. They fought their way, had hosted a prelim final, so they clearly have a team that's good enough. It hasn't got worse than last year, especially with the addition of Bailey Smith. So I think we'll see Geelong be pretty competitive again this year. Next up, we have the Hawthorn Hawks. This is an interesting team. They weren't expected to do anything last year, and Hockball just got the job done. Played outstanding football from about round 7 onwards. It's a hard lineup to pick their best 22, though. They have a lot of key defenders and a lot of good key defenders, but I've gone with Barras and Weddle as the two main ones. Josh Battle to join this lineup as well, so him and Barras both coming straight into their best 22, which puts Sicily up to the forward line potentially. I actually wouldn't mind seeing him coming off a wing at times as well. I know Massimo D'Ambrosio has one wing covered, but I think Sicily will be a bit of a utility kind of player. He'll play where they need him at the time, so he can go back and lock down and get possessions if he needs to. He can play on the wing if they want to free him up a bit, or they can send him forward and play off a half-forward flank, or even a forward pocket. He went forward a couple times last year and really made a difference. He could have kicked the winning goal in the semi-final against Port Adelaide, but hit the post from 50. There was also a game down in Tassie where he kicked 3 goals in the last quarter. So he's someone that can kick goals when he goes forward. Their midfield line is really strong. Newcomb, Nash, Warple, Will Day as well. Interestingly, I have both Gunston and Bruce not in their top 22. I've gone with Scholl and Kaushadea as the 2 key forwards to push Gunston to an emergency. And Bruce, I just don't see how he fits into this team at the moment. With Dylan Moore, Ginnivan, Watson, potentially Sicily in that forward line as well. I just don't think there's enough room for him as well. He might be someone that plays sub again like he did last year a lot. But yeah, it'll be a team that looks like they've got a lot stronger, especially in that back line from last year. Will other teams have worked out? Hockball, I guess we'll find out. But on paper, they certainly look stronger than last year. The Melbourne Demons, what to make of these guys? They fell away a little bit last year, but obviously Petrarca got injured and missed a bit. I haven't heard an update on his injury that he copped about a week ago. So I'm not 100% sure whether he's going to be in there for round 1, but he will be in their best 22 this season. I think the world's waiting to see what Clayton Oliver does. A couple of years ago, he was one of, if not the best players in the competition. Last year was not anywhere near that level. So everyone's hoping to see him fit and firing and ready to go for game 1 this year and back to his best. And if he is, this Melbourne team will compete. In my eyes, they lack the depth across their whole lineup. Their top players are top players. They've got one of the best ruckmen in the competition still. They've got Petrarca, Clayton Oliver, both outstanding. Their midfield after that drops off a little bit. Jack Viney's really strong, but since losing Brayshaw at the end of 2023, they just feel like they're one really good midfielder short. Their backline's really strong though. Stephen May, Lever, Salem. Pickett, I think, will play a lot more midfield time this year. That's my hope, at least. He's obviously starting the season late due to suspension. But if he can get his fitness and get his all of that sorted, he could be one of the better midfielders. And I think he would be someone that would really go into that midfield with Petrarca and Oliver really, really well. So watch for that, I think, throughout 2025. Not the worst looking emergency list of 6 players there, but also, I mean, there's nothing outstanding there. Next up, we've got the Kangaroos from North Melbourne. A team that has certainly gone out and invested in older, more experienced players. Hopefully, I guess, trying to teach some of these young players how to play football, but also trying to get some wins on the board because they have not had many of them over the last 3 or so seasons. So first off, Caleb Daniel will go straight onto that half-back flank and probably rack them up, I would imagine. Another one, I think Colby McKercher takes the other back flank. I'd like to see that, in all honesty. I don't think he quite fits into this midfield. They've got a very deep midfield. But yeah, that's how I see it. Jack Darling, you'd imagine, goes straight into this lineup as well as a centre-half forward, full forward sort of role. Makes it a three-prong tall forward line. That makes sense. Yes, Darling, Larkey and Ford. With a few smaller ones in Simpkin, Zerha and Curtis around him. Tristan Zeri, I think this year we see him go to another level. Probably ends this year as the best ruckman in the competition based on what we've seen. Harry Sheasel, he will be a lot more midfield time this year. I don't think we really will see him coming off that half-back line at all. There's not much need for him to be doing that with the additions of Caleb Daniel, with Zach Fisher down there, potentially Colby McKercher. So I think we see Sheasel as pretty much a full-time mid this year, and I think he will Certainly looked like a lot better player. I think that's always been the thing with him. He's obviously a very talented player, but he's been playing one of the easier roles on the field. George Wardlaw, potentially a great player. Their bench, chuck in Luke Parker. He'll get plenty of midfield time in this team. Obviously played a lot of half-forward flank for Sydney last year. He'll get a lot more midfield time this year, so we'll see him back to his best, I think. Finn O'Sullivan, the first-year player, number 2 draft pick, he'll also get plenty of games. It's a strongish team, in all honesty. I still don't think they're going to be competing anywhere near finals, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them win 7, 8, maybe even 9 games this season. So they're definitely looking better on paper than they did last year. Next up, we got Port Adelaide. They finished second on the ladder. They got knocked out of a prelim final by Sydney. Their team hasn't changed too much. They've obviously lost Dan Houston, 2-time All-Australian, so that's not great for them. They've obviously added Lukosius, though. I think overall it still looks a pretty solid team. Sam Powell-Pepper should be in their best 22. He obviously had a late start to the season last year due to suspension, and then I think it was his first game back. He got injured and missed the rest of the year, so a fit Powell-Pepper will be huge for them. Willie Rioli, that forward line looks really strong. Horn Francis, I'd like to see move full-time into that midfield, but it's just really hard with Butters, Wines and Rosé. Wines obviously can play half-back flank. Maybe they look at that as more of a role for him this year. I don't know, especially with Dan Houston going out. But Horn Francis, I think, is someone they need to give more midfield time and get more midfield time into. But they've got really strong midfield. In fact, their emergency list looks pretty strong. Ivan Soldo as that backup ruckman. Joe Richards from Collingwood. Burton, unlucky not to be in the best 22. Atkins, Logan Evans, and Dante Vicente. It's a strong Port Adelaide team, in all honesty. I don't know if they're better than last year. It'll be interesting to see how they can cover that Dan Houston role. Whether that's Bergman stepping up on that halfback flank, whether it's Kane Farrell, whether Burgoyne goes back. I think so far from what we've seen pre-season so far is Burgoyne will stay on the wing, but you just never know. There's plenty of opportunities for players. So I think it's still a pretty good looking Port Adelaide team. Next up, we've got the Tigers. And the Tiger team that is very interesting in that they've got a lot of young players. How many of them will we be seeing this year, and how many of them will break their way into the best 22? Their backline pretty solid, I think. Will stay much the same as this throughout the year. Floston obviously outstanding. Bolter's missing the start of the year due to club suspension. But their backline's not terrible. Jaden Short should get plenty of it. Midfield, the starting midfield's pretty solid. Nankervis with Prestia Taranto drops off after that. Their forward line, Tom Lynch, he'll be hoping just to get back to some resemblance of what he's previously done in his career. Last year was a very down year for him. Lifu hopefully will also develop. He showed some promising signs. He's a very exciting player to watch. And then they've got some young players in. Smiley, who is a tall inside mid that we'll probably see plenty of. And Sam Layla, who we haven't seen a huge amount of. I think he's like similar style to Harley Reid, just nowhere near as high a level as Harley Reid, if that makes sense. But I think we'll see some good football from him throughout the year. Maybe not as quite to the level as Harley Reid, though. Yeah, I mean, they're a young team. They've got a lot of young players. They're going to have a tough season. I'm not going to say they're not going to win a game this year, but they're certainly not going to win many. If they got 2 wins, they're going pretty well, I think, in 2025, because it's not a team here on paper that looks like they're going to win too many. Next up, we've got the Saints. A lot of people have some high hopes for these guys. And I guess It's probably rightly so. Their team on paper looks pretty strong. They haven't lost too much from last year. I think they need to get more out of their forward line. Max King needs to take another step. I think Cooper Sharman has shown potential, and this year might be where he really takes off. Philippou, I think we see a bit more development from him. Wangani Malira and Bradley Hill as their running players that kind of play halfback, wing, half forward, play a variety of roles. Had a really good season last year, both of them, so we'll see that again. Their backline's pretty strong. Midfield's pretty good. Add in Jack McRae to that team, he'll go straight into their starting midfield line, and I think will show the Bulldogs what they were doing wrong last year, because I think he is certainly a player that is in the starting midfield for pretty much any team in the competition. I know the Bulldogs do have a strong midfield, but still. Roland Marshall, one of the best ruckmen in the competition. Pretty good depth, some good young players on that emergency list as well. So I think this is a team that should take that next step. They finished the season really well last year, but I'm a little bit hesitant to fully back them in. And at the moment, I'm thinking they're a team that finishes about 10th on the ladder, which St Kilda supporters and St Kilda people probably will disagree with. But it's going to be a tight competition in my eyes. The difference between playing finals and missing finals will not be much for teams as far down as maybe 14th and 15th. It might just be one or two losses that they shouldn't have had. So they'll get their chances. They've got a pretty solid team without looking outstanding. Next up, we've got the Swans, who were the pick of the bunch for 15 weeks last year. They then faltered a bit. They picked themselves back up and looked like they had it going again as finals came around. But they fell apart in that grand final. This is how I see their best 22. It's basically not too different from last year. They haven't really added anything. They've lost a couple players like Luke Parker. But overall, I think this is how they line up. I don't know what they do with their tall forwards. It's their biggest issue. McDonald, McLean, Amati, they're all serviceable without being outstanding, and it's probably their big issue. Their midfield is outstanding. Chad Warner, Isaac Heaney, Errol Goulden, chuck in James Rowbottom, who I think is very underrated. Really, really solid midfield. Add in Callum Mills this year for the full season will be huge for them. He missed a lot of last year and obviously missed the grand final as well due to injury. I think him running off the back line back to his best would be huge for them. They haven't got better, and that forward line concerns me a little bit. They rely too much on Papley and Hayward to kick goals, and also their midfielders in Warner, Heaney, Goulden. Between those three, they need them to get almost 6 goals between them. Those three midfielders, they need 5 or 6 goals a week from them, which is too much from your midfield. You want your tall forwards to be contributing a bit more. Obviously, Amati did kick 9 in a game last year, but outside of that, he didn't show a whole heap throughout the rest of the year. Next up, we've got the Eagles. Another team that's kind of starting to look a little bit better in most facets. Liam Baker joining the back line, replacing, obviously they did lose Barras, who's a taller defender, but I think they can cover that. Harry Edwards probably goes into Barras' role. Is he ready for that? I don't know, we'll see. McGovern obviously had a great season last year. There'll be a bit more pressure on him, I think, as a key defender this year. Midfield, pretty strong. Kelly Sheed, Yo, Harley Reid. Be interesting to see how that plays out, but I think they got a pretty solid midfield line. Forward line, Waterman was outstanding last year. They add Uys to that, as well as Jack Graham, so their forward line does kind of get better. Oscar Allen showed potential last year. I don't know if Jack Williams will be in their best 22 throughout the season, but I've got him starting there. Same with Ruck. Matt Flynn is at the moment, but Bailey Williams probably was their best ruckman last year throughout most of the season, or at least their preferred ruckman. I think those two will be fighting out for that spot this year. You then got the new player in Bo Allen. I think we'll see him get plenty of opportunities this year. Giddenby also will get plenty of opportunities. And yeah, I see it as another development year for them. They're still a little bit off from finals football, but based on what we saw last year, I think they've got better, potentially. So I've said that about a lot of teams. They can't all get better. It's simple math, but it will be a team that should be going better than they did last year. Under 7 wins would be disappointing, I think, for West Coast in 2025. Final team to look at is the Western Bulldogs. And what do we make of these guys? A team that has so much hope on paper. Every year looked really good. And including last year, looked really good. But you just couldn't. They just can't get it done. They finished 8th on the ladder and then got pumped by... No, they didn't. They finished 6th on the ladder. Sorry, 6th. I got there eventually. On the ladder and then got kind of pumped by Hawthorn in an elimination final. Rory Lobb, I think, has found a spot down back. His second half of the season last year in that back line was really good, so I think he'll stay down there. The rest of the back line looks pretty solid. Their midfield is obviously outstanding. Bontempelli, Liberatore, Treloar, Ed Richards, really strong. Riley Sanders will surely be getting more opportunity this year. I've put him on a wing. He won't be playing on a wing. He'll probably be starting bench, hopefully not starting sub, and hopefully gets plenty of inside midfield time. That forward line looks really dangerous with it like that 6. I don't think we're going to see too much of that. Obviously, I mentioned about the Ugle-Hagen news earlier. We'll see how that plays out throughout the year. But even still, Norton and Darcy are going to be a really dominant full forward, centre half forward combo. Waitman, Harms will look really good around their feet as well. Tim English, really good ruckman. Dropped a little bit last year, but I still think he's still one of the better ruckmen in the competition. Chuck in Matthew Kennedy from Carlton as another senior body, backup midfielder. Probably plays a little bit like Jack McRae did last year in terms of roles for the Bulldogs. But we'll see him get plenty of opportunity. And, I mean, their emergencies, they aren't great, but they're also not bad. They're all solid players. So it's a Bulldogs team that shows a lot again on paper, but do they put it together on game day consistently? That's their biggest issue, is their consistency. Their best is really good, but their worst is really, really bad. So that's their biggest issue going into 2025, I think, is their consistency. Everyone says, it's the Bevo factor. I don't put it to that. I think it's fully, completely just something about the fact that they cannot be consistent. But they'll be hoping to figure that out. And if they do, they will be very dangerous in 2025. So that's 18 teams, the best 22s. As I mentioned earlier in this video, don't forget I will be doing a YouTube video on every single team's pre-season preview, looking at what we think for them in 2025. They will be coming out throughout the month of February. First one will be 31st of January, and then every day through February, every weekday that is. There'll be another episode of them. So check all of them out. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, whether you're on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. Hit that subscribe button. Give me a rating. If it's on Spotify, out of 5, probably 5. Why not? Share with your friends. Like this one. Jump in the comments. Let me know if there's any glaring omissions I made from the best 22 or someone I put in that shouldn't be there. Let me know your thoughts. Head over to TikTok. There's plenty of content there. Same with Instagram, Twitter /X. All of them. Go check it all out. I appreciate you for tuning in. If you're still here, thank you. We'll be back next Wednesday with another video. We're going to have Supercoach and fantasy previews coming up as well soon. So check all that out. I'm John. This is All Aussie Rules, and we'll catch you on the next one.